fellow booktubers, my name is Laura and you're watching Dreams, Books, Courage, and today I'm going to be doing a book discussion over the Heir by Kira Cass. And since I'm doing a book discussion over a book about a princess, I decided to dress in a dress that makes me feel like a princess as well. Anyways, for those of you who do not know, the Heir is actually part of a companion duology to the original Selection trilogy. So if you have not yet read the Selection, then definitely read that before you get on to this book. This actually takes place about 20 years after the Selection trilogy is over, and this follows Princess Evelyn, who is the daughter of Prince Maxim. And she has to go through her own selection, which means that she has to choose between 35 boys to become her husband. And so this reminds me a lot of like The Bachelorette if it was to take place in a dystopian world. I really enjoyed this book, but if you did not enjoy the Selection trilogy, then I probably wouldn't recommend you pick this up. But if you do enjoy novels about girls in pretty dresses and handsome men, then I think that you would really like this one as well. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Overall, I really enjoyed the characters, especially if they were main characters. They seemed to be very unique and they had their own flaws, but I feel like there wasn't enough character development that happened and there wasn't really a plot, and I just wish we knew more about this dystopian world that they lived in. Overall, I just found it to be a very enjoyable read. If you guys have not yet read this book, then I would click off this video now because I'm going to be going into the spoiler section. But after you read this book, then definitely come back and we can discuss this book together. So first, let's talk about the main characters in this book, starting with Princess Evelyn, of course. She is quite a stubborn character and she definitely has quite a few flaws, but you also have to keep in mind that she is only 18 years old and she's in charge of running a country with her dad, so obviously she has a lot on her plate and she really doesn't want to go into the selection for very good reasons. I felt like I could relate in some ways to Princess Evelyn because we are the same age of 18 and she is in a leadership position, and I have also been in quite a few leadership positions. And I can understand that it's very hard to get people to really accept that you're a leader whenever you're so young. Like, I would say that Evelyn does have maturity whenever it comes to her job of running the country. And so people don't really understand how hard that is, but I can definitely understand that it takes up all of her time and it's harder for her to devote herself to her country whenever she has to deal with all of these boys. I did feel like she made the wrong decisions in some ways, and she definitely has a lot of room to grow. So hopefully we'll see way more character development in Princess Evelyn within the next book. And so now let's talk about a few of these selected. First we have Kyle, who has lived with Evelyn all her life, and they don't really get along, but then they somehow kind of become friends with benefits. It was kind of a gap between how that happened because it just came about so suddenly and they didn't really even like each other before that. But overall, I do like Kyle and he does have some pretty good ideas for the country, so I do think that he'll make it to the top 3, and I think that he is in game for Evelyn, so I do think that they'll stay together. Especially in the end of the Heir, whenever Kyle is just doodling, but he's actually making a shelter for the homeless. They didn't really go into much detail after that about it, but I feel like that's going to take place more in the second novel. It's kind of like America and how she proposed ending the caste system, so since it has a parallel like that, I feel like it will come into play in the next book and that Kyle is in game. Then we have Heir, and Heir is just such a sweet guy, and I love that him and Evelyn can really bond over their love of fashion, and I really like him. I think he'll make it to the top 3. It seemed like Heir wasn't really a part of the last part of this book, but he definitely played a big role in the first part, so I'm really looking forward to seeing more from his character. And then we have Henry, sweet, quiet Henry, who has a very hard time communicating with Evelyn, but they do share a type of love together. Although he's very sweet and they could somehow work it out together even though they have a language barrier between them, I'm not really sure if he's even going to make it to the top 3, but I do think that he'll be within the top 5 people. He's very sweet, but we don't really get a lot from his character because there is that language barrier. And so I don't really know if they can really work that out. Evelyn really needs to choose a partner within the next 2 months after this book takes place, so I don't really think they can move past that language barrier that quickly for them to get married. And then the last main character that I want to talk about is actually Eric, also known as Aiko. And although he's not one of the selected, I'm pretty sure that he's going to be playing a part in the next book. Like, I think somehow he'll be like a wild card and he'll join the selection. There's obviously something going on between him and Evelyn, and I kind of guessed that very early on in this book, but it definitely had some strong hints towards that towards the end of it. Kind of like in Prince Maxim's Selection, how a princess from France was actually entered into it much later in the competition. I feel like that's kind of how it's going to be for Eric, and I really like Eric. I would want him to make it to the top 2 spots. He is very, very sweet, and there's this one quote about Eric that comes from Evelyn, and it says, "This time I felt like I was on the other side of that, looking past duty and worry and rank, seeing the true heart of a person. And his was so beautiful." I felt like that was just such a cute moment between Evelyn and Eric, and that just explained a lot about Eric and how sweet he is down to his very heart. I really like the character of Eric, and I think he would just be perfect for Evelyn. He definitely helps her a lot, and although I don't really think at this point in time that he is in-game, I do hope that he makes it to the top 2 spots. So now let's talk about some pros and cons I had with this book. First, let's start with the pros. I really enjoyed the characters, obviously. I enjoyed the main ones. There are some that aren't really mentioned and they don't really have much detail about them. But I do like the ones like Kyle and Henry and the other ones that I've already mentioned. I do appreciate that Evelyn is a very flawed character, and so she has a lot to do in terms of character development, but I'm glad that she's not like this perfect princess or anything like that. And I also like to be able to view this from the point of the selector instead of the selected. It just completely changes the game, and it makes it so much harder to see who is really going to be in game for Evelyn, whereas in the selection we all pretty much knew from the very start of it that it was going to be America. And then in terms of cons, like I said earlier, there is a lack of character development in this book, and there also is like barely any plot whatsoever. And I'd really like to learn about this world as a whole. Throughout the Selected trilogy and also the Heir, you don't really learn about the dystopia itself, you just learn about that things are going badly, but you don't really know how the dystopian even works. Obviously they're trying to make this dystopian over into a utopian once again, but it is a very hard process, and I'm glad that we do get to see that part of it. I really like the part in which Evelyn says, "I only have one heart and I'm saving it," and I just think that that's a very powerful statement, and that really does describe how Evelyn feels in general, and I'm glad that that did show a bit of character development for her. This took me quite a while to read. For whatever reason, maybe it brought me into a reading slump, I'm not really sure. But overall, I did find this book to be very enjoyable, and I know that people are definitely going to have quite mixed reviews on this book. If I had to rank the books, I'd probably say the One, then the Selection, then the Heir, and then the Elite. I found all the books enjoyable so far, and so I'm really looking forward to where this one is heading. Aaron didn't really have to leave. Like, I don't know if that's really going to be a major point in the plot. Maybe it's supposed to make her come to a realization that she does need to choose someone to be with her, but I don't really think it was necessary to have that section whatsoever, and it was kind of ridiculous on Aaron's part to just go ahead and get married right then. So I found pretty much all of that part pointless, and I didn't really have any feelings on whether or not Aaron stayed. Whenever America did have that heart attack, that did make me tear up a bit. Obviously I've grown invested in a lot of these characters because I've read so many books about them, but I'm just hoping that America makes a quick recovery within the next book, and that plot twist was just left there in order for people to pick up the next book. I don't really know that that was necessary either, especially if it's not even going to play a big role in the next book, which I kind of doubt that it will. I'm definitely looking forward to where this is headed and who Princess Evelyn chooses. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I would love to know your thoughts on the Heir down below, and now I'm gonna go get back to reading.